anytime you want. Let's just be informal. And hopefully we'll make sure we take a break. I'm going to rely on my LCATR people to kind of raise your hand. Let me know if you're feeling like it's time to take a break. Otherwise, we'll go in about an hour. Remember to push your button if you have a question or you want to talk. I really do want some participation. I know that's a little bit harder over the ICN, but I'm hoping that we'll have some interaction tonight too. So hopefully you were able to get the handouts too. You can download those from the Keystone website. Did anybody have difficulty doing that or need directions on how to get to the handouts? It's under, it's the Keystone website, Programs and Services, and then Paraeducator Information, and then Paraeducator Resources, and then ICN Handouts, and I believe it's under today's date, March 12th. Okay. Let's start with a little bit of an activity. I want you to just get comfortable in your seats, close your eyes if you'd like, and I want you to think back to your own school years. You may want to go back to a time of the same age as the kids that you work with now, or really any time during your K-12 experience, even preschool. That'd be fine too. Something back in your day of school. Some of us have to go back a little longer than others. So, all right, so think back. I want you to think about the sights and the sounds and the smells in your school. Visualize what it was like getting to and from school. Did you take a bus? Did you have to walk? Did you get a ride from a parent? What was it like being called on in class during that time? What was it like finding someone to play with at recess or to pass from one class to the next with? What was it like to sit at lunch? Think about those experiences. Now recall a time when you were aware of a bullying incident. Maybe you were a bystander and witnessed the bullying. Maybe you were the bullied student. Or maybe you were the person who bullied someone else. Try to recall what happened, what you said or what you did. What was the incident like? And what was it like? What did it feel like when you said or did what you did? Okay, now move forward in time to the present. Come back to here to me. And I want you to think about whether that earlier incident affects how you feel now. How did that incident, how do you respond now based on that incident? How do you respond now when you see or hear bullying take place, or you hear about bullying? How do you feel when you encounter difficult situations or a bullying incident now? Think about how it affects you today. Okay. All right, take a couple deep breaths. Get back here. How many of you could remember something about your bullying from your own school years. Were there several of you that could do that? Is anyone willing to share their bullying incident and how it's affected you today? Anyone willing to give us just a summary? Don't be shy. No, you don't have to share. Is there anybody that's willing, though? Okay, Cascade.
Okay, I'll give it a shot.
Wonderful.
I went to a Catholic grade school, and we were separated into like A, B, and C groups. And your A groups were your better students, your B groups, middle students, C groups, your lower learning students. And we always wanted to be with the A kids because they were the smart kids and the better of the kids, And I can distinctly remember some of the C group girls, they were not fancy uniforms like the A group or the middle group or whatever. And they weren't clean and stuff, and we just kind of also segregated them, and there were two of them, and they always hung around together, but they would never be able to be in our group, or they were the last to be picked for the baseball game out at recess or the kickball and whatever. And we all just followed the A group girls because they were the cool girls. So we kind of took on to it, but then later on, it would only last for about a month or so, and then we were all good again. And then something else would be the bullying thing that we would take up on. Okay. Kind of weird. Man, we were kids, so.
Right. Well, bullying incidents are dynamic, certainly, and not static. So they do change, and people move in and out of different roles oftentimes. So thank you very much for sharing. Can you share how that might affect you now? Does that incident or those bullying incidents affect you now?
I see it a little bit through the junior high age yet. When the students are getting into the senior high, some of them don't display it like so much at school, but then outside it could be told different in their little communities outside, or also on computer type areas too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else willing to share their incident, what they were thinking?
I remember being the bully.
Okay, can you tell us?
I remember kindergarten, and I was always fluffy. I'm still fluffy. And it was the fatty 2x4, can't fit through the kitchen door. And I remember swinging and hearing that, even to this day. And I've shared that with my behavior kids, so they know I'm really tough on it, because I still remember that. And I'm 50-ish.
Okay. Thank you very much. You mentioned it just now too, but the rest of you, think about how close those emotions are to the surface once you start thinking about and going back and kind of reliving that incident. Could you feel the emotions right there? So you think about how, even though our incidents happened many years ago, for most of us, many years ago, and we still can get very emotional about it or get in touch with those feelings. Think about those kids who are living it every day and how raw those emotions are for them. So it's just so important that we're in tune and aware, and sometimes those incidents that we lived with in the past help us to stay in tune with that. Well, thank you very much for sharing. Hopefully that sets the mood for today. We're going to be talking about bullying and harassment, some ways to prevent it, some ways to deal with it when you see it. I want to talk to you about what it is and what it isn't, so you can be helped in identifying it when it happens. So the next thing I want you to do is take this little quiz. You can just take it on a scratch piece of paper. This is an individual assignment. So can you see that okay, or do I need to zoom it in more? Zoom it in a little? Okay.
Is it what's on the handout?
Did I attach the handout? I can.
Yes.
Yes, it is the handout. I guess I debated whether I should send that or not. So yes, if you brought the handout, it's the true-false quiz. Otherwise, just go ahead and take it on some scratch paper.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
This is June Fretheim checking in at Cresco.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. What school are you from? Are you from?
Decorah.
Okay. Do you teach at the middle school or elementary or high school level?
I teach at the high school level in Decorah.
Okay, great. Thanks. We're taking the true-false quiz, which was one of your handouts. So if you just got here.
Yeah, I heard that.
Okay, perfect. All right, I think we'll go ahead and we'll just quickly correct this. So number one, studies suggest that fewer than 10% of children are involved in bullying problems in elementary or middle school. That is false. Generally, about the U.S. average is 15 to 17% of kids are involved in bullying problems. So we have about 17% of kids that report that they have been bullied. Around 10% of kids that were surveyed, and this is a large-scale survey. So we have, I can't even think off the top of my head how many kids, but like 98,000 kids, something like that. So it's a huge study. 10% of kids, about 10% of kids admit to bullying others 2 to 3 times a month or more. So about 15 to 17%, a little higher than what the question reads. Okay, number 2, children are more likely to be bullied in middle school than in elementary school. That is false. We tend to see a steady decrease in those who bully from grades 3 through 12, kind of goes down. And for boys and girls, actually. For boys, it levels off about 11th grade. So it decreases from 3rd grade on, and then it kind of levels off. So really, the highest reported bullying is in the upper elementary grades, for those who report that they are bullying others. I'm sorry, that report that have been bullied. I'm sorry. So about upper elementary kids report being bullied more often. It's about the peak. So for bullying others, however, it peaks about in the 8th grade, okay, upper middle school, for kids who are bullying others. And then it decreases through the 12th grade for girls. For boys, levels off around the 8th grade and remains steady through the high school. So for being bullied, it's upper elementary is the peak. For bullying others, around the 8th grade is the peak. And that's because most kids tend to bully kids that are younger than them. That's a big issue. All right, number 3. Most bullying is physical in nature. What do you think? False. What would you think is the most common form of bullying? Okay, to remember to push your button if you're going to answer, which is wonderful, but I want everybody else to hear you too. Most common form of bullying, anybody?
Verbal.
That's correct. Verbal is the most common form of bullying for both boys and girls. Number 4, girls bully just as much as boys. They just do it differently. This is kind of a trick question. Boys are more likely to bully than girls, but boys and girls do bully differently. So boys are more likely to bully. So we have some similarities and differences in the way boys and girls bully. Both boys and girls engage in verbal bullying, most common form. Both engage in relational bullying. Relational bullying is the kind of bullying that is used to maybe ruin somebody's reputation, to manipulate friendships. That's relational bullying. Okay. Boys are more likely to report being physically bullied. Girls are more likely to report being excluded or having rumors spread about them, sexual comments. Boys are mostly bullied by boys. Girls are bullied by both boys and girls. So there are some gender differences. Okay, number 5, boys are more likely than girls to be involved in cyberbullying. We know that cyberbullying can be the internet, Facebook, texting, email, although kids don't use email too much anymore. Okay. So, this is also false. Girls are more, in the United States, most data shows that girls are more involved in cyberbullying than boys. Number 6, the vast majority of children who are bullied tell a teacher or other member of the school staff. That is false. We know that between 30 and 60% of children do not report their victimization, at least not to adults at school or to their parents. They may tell a friend, but not to an adult. So why do you think that children do not tell a teacher or another member of the school staff? Why don't they tell somebody in school?
I think it's because they fear that somebody will find out they told.
Okay. Afraid that somebody will find out, and maybe what then? If somebody finds out.
Make things worse for themselves.
Right. That things will get worse. Fear of retaliation. Why else might a student not tell somebody?
Embarrassment.
Okay, they're embarrassed that it happened, maybe? They don't want to admit that they got bullied? Or how they got bullied might have been very embarrassing? Anything else?
They might think they deserve it if that's the way they get treated at home. No.
Okay. Over time, students or kids who have been bullied over time, there is this sense that they might feel like it's just who they are and they deserve it. It becomes part of their personality. Does not mean that we should blame them, however. Just okay. Also, sometimes kids don't trust that if they tell anything's going to change or anything will get better. They don't have faith that the staff or the teachers can do anything about it. Or maybe they tried telling and nothing happened, so they're not going to tell again because that didn't work. So, okay, number 7. Bullying is just as likely on the way to and from school as during school hours. What do you think?
That's true.
Okay, that happens to be false. There is obviously lots of bullying on the bus and at the bus stop. This is false simply because kids spend more time at school than they do on the bus and going to and from school often. There's more hours of the day and more people, so there's just a greater chance that kids can get bullied at school. Okay, last question. Most students who observe bullying don't think they should get involved. Also false, which is good news for us. Most students, of the students that were surveyed, most students indicated that they either try to help or that they think they should help, but they don't know. They don't help, but they think they should. So either they do try to help or they think they should help. And why is that good news for us? Why is that good news for us? It means kids have empathy, and most kids don't like the bullying. They don't like it. They want something to happen about it. It probably means that we need to do some work on helping kids know what to do and giving them the courage to do it. But there's a lot of hope there with those bystanders. Okay, any questions on the true-false quiz or any of the statistics I gave you, the research?
I disagree with number 2.
Okay. Let me go back to that one. Children are more likely to be bullied in middle school than in elementary school. Tell me more about that.
I think it should be more equal because I worked with middle schoolers the whole afternoon and they are just god-awful.
We're not saying that it doesn't happen at the middle school level. It just, out of this study of 98,000 kids, it happened more in the upper elementary grades. Okay. But thank you for your thoughts. We know it is a problem in middle school. And you're hearing it a lot because that's where the peak is for those kids who bully. They're in that 7th and 8th grade, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. So it is happening. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what bullying is and what bullying isn't. I'm going to go to my computer here. I am using a lot of information from the Olveus Bullying Prevention Program, and because it's research-based, the research that they've done Are these large-scale studies, so the research is valid? So I'm not trying to sell the Ulvaeus program, although I'm a certified trainer, so I'm not trying to sell the program, but I just want you to know that I am using a lot of the information that comes out of that program. And so I'm, obviously you'll see on the slides too, I need to give credit where credit is due. So I am using some of the material there. So the bullying that Dan Ulvaeus, the founder of Ulvaeus, through his work, came up with this definition. Bullying is when someone repeatedly or on purpose says or does mean or hurtful things to another person who has a hard time defending himself or herself. Now, a couple things. We want to make sure that we're not using labels like bully and victim. Okay, we want to be talking about the bullying behavior instead of the person. And focus on the behavior, because the behavior is what can be changed, all right? So when we talk about this definition, there's really three components to it. One, it involves an aggressive behavior. It's aggressive, it's hurtful, it's a form of aggression. It's often repeated. So if you look back, you can see that it's probably happened over time. Maybe not the same kid, but that behavior has happened. Maybe the student that's been bullied, often they've been repeatedly bullied. The student who's doing the bullying, they often do that behavior to many kids or target certain kids. Okay? So usually if you look back, you can see a pattern of behavior. However, we don't want to wait until you know that there's a pattern before you intervene. As soon as you see the bullying behavior, you want to intervene. You don't want to say, oh, I wonder if that's a pattern. I maybe should wait till I know it's a pattern. Okay? So even if it's the very first time you've seen it, it may have happened many other times with other people. So you need to intervene immediately. And then, unlike other forms of aggression, there's this imbalance of power and strength, power or strength, where the person who's doing the bullying has more power than the student who's being bullied. And this power imbalance isn't just necessarily physical, where one student's bigger than the other. What are some other ways that kids could exert power over somebody else, or where you might have a power imbalance? What are some other examples of a power imbalance?
Clothes they wear.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
More friends behind them.
Absolutely. Power in numbers. More friends. Very good. Thank you. So power in numbers. Physical stature. What other kinds of imbalance of power can you have?
Socioeconomic, rich versus poor.
Yes. Very good.
The clothes they wear.
Yes.
The friends that they have.
Okay. Popularity. Kinds of friends that they have. Could be strength. How about intellectual power? Social status. Okay, so there's lots of ways that somebody can exert power over somebody else. So as a result then, the student who's being bullied has a difficult time defending themselves because things are already stacked against them. All right? And that's why it's so important for adults to help intervene, because they really, truly have a hard time doing it themselves. Really, bullying is a form of victimization or peer abuse. It's different from other types of conflict, like fighting or teasing that goes wrong. Okay, because when you have another type of conflict, often those people are on the same footing as far as power. But when you have a bullying situation, that power is not in balance, and so somebody's victimizing another person. So it's similar to maybe a domestic violence situation or child abuse situation, more so than other types of conflict. Okay, so we know we all have heard of all these different kinds of bullying. There's direct kinds and also very indirect kinds of bullying. And as kids get older, they get more sophisticated in the ways that they can bully. Lots of times there are direct and indirect way. They combine their methods. All right. And then that includes that relational bullying that we talked about too. So let's talk a little bit about the differences again about fighting, teasing, bullying. How are these things different? How are you going to distinguish whether it is a bullying situation or just a conflict that you have to deal with in a different way? You have a handout that's called Similarities and Differences Between Rough and Tumble Play, Real Fighting, and Bullying. And I'm not sure, well, I guess you're going to be able to see most of this anyways. Okay, so it looks like this. I'm going to take that. So say you have two kids out on the playground or in the locker room or outside in the parking lot, and they're having a conflict or they're having an issue, and you're not sure whether it's just a conflict or whether it's a bullying incident. Either way, you probably are going to have to deal with it. If it's inappropriate, you're going to have to intervene. But how are you going to handle it differently if it's just a conflict or a bullying situation? How are you going to know that? You've all been in situations where there's just some teasing going on. Kids are having a hard time focusing this. Here we go. Okay. So maybe it starts out teasing, they're just kind of goofing around, and then it goes a little bit too far, and somebody gets mad about it because it's gone too far. And so there's some name calling. Okay. So is that a bullying incident or not? Here's some ways that you can tell. Look at the relationship between the parties. Are they generally friends? Now I know we have mean girls where kids can be friends one day and not friends another day. But typically, are these kids friends? What's the relationship between them? Often, if it's a bullying incident, those kids are not usually friends. Okay. How many participants? Is there a power imbalance surely in numbers? Okay. Is there some other imbalance of power that you know of, given the relationship or given what you know of those kids? Okay. What is the affect of the kids? Are they both kind of having fun and thinking this is okay? Both of them are smiling, even though some of the words coming out of their mouth might be teasing or might not be really nice, but they're taking it okay. Look at the affect. If one student is clearly not liking it and the other one's laughing or liking it, that might be a clue that you have a bullying situation here. Okay. What's the intention? Is it just friendly bantering, or is it negative and hurtful? And is it meant to be hurtful? Okay. And is it repeated? Have you seen this happen often? Okay, so there's there's the back page. I won't go through it all. But if you start looking at some of those clues, you can get an idea of whether this is a bullying situation that you need to be concerned about, or a conflict that they'll be able to work out on by themselves, that kind of thing. Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. I'm going to quickly go through just the characteristics. We're going to talk about the characteristics of the students who typically get bullied, and then talk about those who do the bullying, and then we're going to talk about the bystanders. So there's typically two kind of categories of bullied students. So the first category is, and here I got to go back to my computer here. There we go. Is the passive victim, and then we have the provocative or the provocative victims. Now, because I just told you we don't want to use the term victims, but in Dan Oveas' research early on, that's how it was defined. So I'm going to use those terms. But again, remember when we're talking about those bullying, we want to talk about the behavior. Okay, so passive victims, you know them. You probably can picture one of the kids in your head right now. They tend to be maybe less mature, a little bit maybe physically weaker, smaller in stature, a little more insecure, maybe quieter, maybe shy, anxious. Okay.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Are you able to send us copies of this stuff? Because we can't write this fast. Thank you.
Yes, I just have to get clearance for, it's copyrighted material, so I'll have to just get permission to be able to post this. That's why I didn't send it to you ahead of time. So.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. So it's those kids that tend to be a little less insecure, and they, I'm going to go back to that. Okay. So sometimes these factors or characteristics can both be a contributing factor and a consequence, unfortunately, of the victimization. So because they're maybe a little less insecure, they may be an easy target. Okay? Now, we don't want to blame the student. It's not their fault that they're insecure and that's why they're getting bullied. Okay? So we don't want to blame them, but that might be one reason or a contributing factor of why they might be easily bullied. But then it also may become a consequence. So they get bullied, and then as a result of the bullying, they become more insecure. So it's a contributing factor and a consequence of the bullying. So you get into this kind of this vicious cycle with bullied students often, which is pretty sad. Then we have the provocative victims. And I know when I talk about these kids, you'll all have somebody popping in your head too. It's those kids who drive you crazy. They disrupt, they irritate other kids, they probably irritate the staff, and you want to just say, well, they had it coming. You know, that behavior, kids just can't handle it, and they had it coming. They do cause irritation. And this is difficult because it's hard to separate those behaviors. I actually have a son who grew up, and he was terribly bullied as a student through high school, all the way through high school. But he did have some behaviors that irritated other kids. So it was very hard. I had to keep his behavior separate from the others and be careful not to blame him for the bullying he got, but also hold him accountable for his behavior. So if he was distracting or blurting out, hold him accountable for that and try to help him deal with that behavior without blaming him for or saying, you had it coming, you shouldn't have done that, and try to keep the other kids accountable for their behavior. So it's very hard to do, but it's really important that you teach them the social skills they need separate from the consequences that you give the students who are doing the bullying and trying to teach them how to act differently with that student. Okay. We know that some kids are at higher risk of being bullied. These are all things that can happen as a result of being bullied. Lower self-esteem. Often they have higher absentee rates. They don't want to come to school. They dislike school. Often they get lower grades because it's hard for them to concentrate on their work because they're afraid of the next time they're going to get bullied. Okay. And these things can persist into adulthood too. We know that kids or students that get bullied have health consequences. So you can see there students who are bullied, the much higher rates of complaints, of physical complaints that they have compared to those who are not bullied. School nurses get those frequent flyers in the office with all sorts of health complaints. Okay, so those are the students who endure the bullying. Any questions on those kids? Can you think of one or two kids in your school that endure this kind of bullying, and you can see the imbalance of power that they have, the lack of power that they have over others? Okay, then we have kids who do the bullying. And there's not a single profile, but these are some characteristics of kids who do the bullying. They tend to be impulsive. They don't have a lot of empathy for kids with less power than them. They often are involved with other rule-breaking activities. However, many of the really popular, strong kids in your school can participate in bullying. The thing about the kids who bully is we need to stop it. It can become a pattern of behavior, of antisocial behavior, or future conduct disorder behavior patterns. So it's important that we put a stop to it, or those behaviors can get more serious as they get older. So it's important that we deal with them early on as well. And you can see some of these other behaviors that kids who bully can get into, which don't directly have anything to do with bullying, but they're certainly destructive behaviors. And this also can continue into adulthood. There was a study in Norway where they identified boys in middle school who were considered to be bullies or engage in bullying behavior. 60% of those boys had at least one conviction by the time they were age 24. 35 to 40% of them had 3 or more convictions. So we know that bullying behavior, if it's not checked, if we don't help them build empathy and teach them, give them the consequences they need, certainly can be can be very troublesome as they get older. Okay. Couple myths about kids who bully. Really, a lot of people think that children who bully are loners, and this isn't really true. They do have an easier time, often have an easier time making friends, and they're at least average, maybe a little bit below average in popularity, but most of them at least have a small group of friends that we call followers, and so they're not really all alone. Is somebody pushing their button trying to talk, or we're getting a bunch of static? Okay. The other myth is that students who bully have low self-esteem, and this was one that I grew up thinking, that they don't feel good about themselves, so they're going to pick on somebody else to help them feel better about themselves. And really this isn't true. Kids who bully are average or above average. They have average or above average self-esteem. They really feel pretty good about themselves. They have the power and they know it. So to do self-esteem building with these kids really isn't the way to go, because they have it. We just need to redirect it. So what do you think motivates somebody to bully somebody else? What do they get out of it? What do students who bully get out of it? What motivates them?
Attention from their peers.
Okay, attention. Yep. Status. Can you say that again?
Control.
Okay. They have that power or control over somebody else. They like that power. They like to dominate others over in a negative way often. Anything else that you can think of?
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, when you have children who bully have low self-esteem, isn't it kind of a mixed feeling there? Because don't we raise our kids to feel good about themselves and have high self-esteem? So are we doing the opposite we should be doing?
No. We want our kids to have high self-esteem. We just want to also teach them the behaviors that we want them to do, the appropriate behaviors that we want them to do. Because lots of kids with high self-esteem, if you have high self-esteem, that doesn't mean you're going to be a bully or a student who bullies somebody else. It's the empathy part that we need to work on for those students. Good question, though. Thank you. Okay. Often kids who bully get stuff. They get money, they get lunch money, they get backpacks, they get tennis shoes. So a lot of times there's a tangible reward for bullying. And they kind of gain satisfaction from inflicting suffering or pain on somebody else. Okay, so what about the kids who are the bystanders? Are those kids who aren't directly the student who's being bullied or the student who's doing the bullying, but the bystanders, those kids who witness it and know it's happening? We also need to be concerned about them because they may be feeling anxious or unsafe, afraid that they're going to be the next target. They might feel guilty because they're not doing anything about it and know they should or want to. Okay. And then over time, if nothing gets done, they may also think, oh, that kid kind of deserves it. That reduced empathy that they might start feeling for somebody who gets bullied. So it's important that we don't forget the bystanders. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and all the different roles that kids play in a bullying situation. But we're going to do that after a break. I see we probably need a little bit of a break. So why don't we take, do you usually take 15 minutes? Let's come back at 3 minutes after 5. We'll get started again. Okay?
Is it possible not to take a break and leave sooner?
Agree.
If people are okay with that. Are they all agreeing? Are you all agreeing?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I'm good with that. Let's just go. We'll plow ahead, and if you need to use the restroom or get a drink, you can just do that on your own. I'm fine with that. Okay? And if I have to stop for a couple minutes, we'll do that. But I'm okay for right now. Okay, I want to talk about the roles that kids play, and adults do this too, in a bullying situation. It's not just the student who's doing the bullying and the student who's the victim of the bullying. So we have A, the student who's doing the bullying, and we have H, that's the student who's being targeted. That letter A, or the student who's doing the bullying, starts it. They get it going. They start it, take an active part. They're the ones pushing, hitting, yelling, stealing, whatever it is, whatever behavior that they're engaged in. Then we have B, those followers. Those are the kids who, they might not start it, but boy, they're right in there laughing and helping out once it gets going. Okay. Next you have those supporters, or C. Those are the kids who maybe aren't as actively participating, but they like what's going on. They might be laughing. They might not do something right there, but boy, they're telling their friends that later on, or spreading the word, laughing about it at another time. Okay, so they're liking what's going on. Then we have D, and you do have this in a handout. So, then you have D, those passive supporters. They know enough not to openly show support because they don't want to get in trouble, but they do kind of like it. They kind of think that the kid has it coming. They might talk about it later, but they're not going to show open support. They just kind of let it be and think it's okay. Next we have E, those disengaged onlookers. Those are the kids who say, it's none of my business, I don't want to have anything to do with it. They walk away, they stay out of the situation. Don't want any part of it. But they also don't do anything about it. Okay. Next we have those possible defenders. They don't like what's going on. They dislike the bullying. It makes them feel uncomfortable. They feel sorry for the student who's being bullied. They know they should help, they want to help, but they don't. For some reason they don't do anything. But they don't like what's going on. And then lastly we have G, the defenders. Those are the kids who try to do something. They help, they intervene, they do something, they act, do some kind of action because they don't like what's happening. So for those kids who are the defenders, what kinds of things might they try to do to help? What kinds of things might the defenders do to try to help the bullied student?
Tell the other kid to stop it.
Okay, they might confront the student who's doing the bullying. Tell them to cut it out, to stop what they're doing. That takes a lot of guts, right? That's a pretty high-risk intervention for that student. So that mostly those defenders, they have pretty good self-esteem, some confidence. You know, they've got some characteristics that allow them, they probably have a lot of support, allow them to take some risk in order to intervene. Okay? What else might they do?
Get help, get a teacher or an adult.
Okay, maybe they don't feel like they can step in, but they can go get help. Go tell somebody. Absolutely. What else? Anything? How about taking the bullied student away getting them out of the situation. Or maybe even later on going back to them and saying, I'm really sorry that happened to you. Why don't you eat lunch with me tomorrow? Or, you know, so you can kind of see there's a little bit of a continuum of risk there. So they might not be able to feel like they can intervene and confront the student who's doing the bullying, but there are some other behaviors that we can teach kids that are maybe less risky that they could do instead, but still take action. Okay. How about F? Why do you think those kids don't help? They think they should, they want to. Why don't you think they do?
Because they might get bullied.
Right. We talked about that earlier, that fear of retaliation, or they don't want to be the next target. They might get included in that bullying. They don't want to do that. Anything else? Why don't they help?
They don't know what to do?
Exactly. They don't know what to do. So we have to teach them some options. Okay. Usually in my trainings, we do this in a role play. So we actually line people up in the circle and have people do some role playing. And then I have everybody in the audience come and stand behind the student who they think most is most typical of the student in their building. So I want you to think about that. Think about the typical kid in your school, the typical kid that you work with. Where would most kids in your school fall on this circle? What role would they assume? Would most kids assume in your building? Anybody want to just throw out one of the roles that they think most kids would fall under?
E.
Okay, that disengaged onlooker. Anything else? Anybody else? How about possible defenders? A lot of kids don't like it. We talked about that in the survey, that really most kids don't like to see it. They just don't know what to do. And they think they should help, but they don't know what to do. Oh, I hope I didn't mess this up now. Well, it's not going to let me go to the overhead. So anyways, you'll have to, I was going to show you with my hands, but I can't. So anyways, so if you think about the student in the middle, the student who's being bullied, where are they feeling the power is? Where's the power coming from if they're being bullied by A and B and C and then the defenders are F and G? Where do they feel, if you're sitting in the middle of that situation, where do they feel the power is coming from? I heard an A here in Al-Qaeda. Anybody disagree with that? Or? Okay, so if you think the power is coming from A, kind of the A and B, all those kids really are at them, they're bullying, they're actively victimizing the student, that's where the power is feeling. But if you think about all of the kids in the building being kind of in that EF area, where really is the power in your building if you utilized it? It's further around on the circle, right? Okay. So that's the idea in a school or in your work with kids, is to help kids shift. So we want to take the power away from those kids on A and B. Don't give them as much attention or status from the bullying. Take that away. Give those possible defenders some tools and some options on what to do. Teach those disengaged onlookers that this is your responsibility. It is an expectation in our school that you do something. You don't have to confront the student who's doing the bullying, but you got to do something. It's not okay to say it's none of my business. Okay? So we want to teach them to do something, report, have a place on in a locker or in a box where they can write a note anonymously and tell what's happening. Teach them ways to get involved. Okay, low risk as well as high risk ways. But we want to shift the power around that circle and use the bystanders in our building to change the culture in the building, to say, it's not okay, we're not going to tolerate this in our school, and we want to do something about it. Okay. Questions about the roles in bullying? Okay, I'm going to show you a little video clip, and I want you to be looking at the kids in the video in the eyes of these roles and see what kinds of roles you can identify. So hopefully I can get this working. Where are you? It's coming.
That Jean is such a little wuss. Hey, Jeannie! Jeannie, hello! You played like a girl today, Jeannie.
Yeah, a girl with 2 left feet.
Show us how you dribble, Jeannie.
Come on, Jeannie, show us.
Jeannie. You're not scared of us, are you?
Oh, Jeannie, you gonna cry?
Shut up.
Hey, you guys. That's enough messing around. Let's get to class.
What's the matter, Jeannie? Can't you take it?
We'll see you later, Jeannie. Hey, what? Hey, what?
Who are they talking to? Who do you think they're talking to? They're coming up here. Oh, great.
Move. We're sitting here. You weren't ignoring us just then, were you, Jeannie?
We just hate to be ignored. Why can't you guys just go away and get a life?
Jean. Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, Jeannie. Is this your girlfriend?
I bet you play that clarinet real pretty.
You play for your girlfriend here?
Haven't you guys had enough yet?
Oh, I get it. You want us to leave the 2 of you alone.
You jerks. Just leave them alone. You're pathetic. Come on, you guys. Turn around. Sit down. We're leaving.
Okay, what roles did you see?
All of them.
Pretty much all of them, didn't we? We had the bully, the student who did the bullying, the student who was being bullied, and he had some pretty good skills to try to defend himself, but it didn't work real well, but at least he tried, right? You found the girl on the bus was the defender, telling him to stop it. Saw some possible defenders that didn't like it, but they weren't going to say anything at that point. Disengaged onlookers and some supporters. Okay. So often what we do in schools and in other situations too, we deal with A and H and maybe B if they're actively involved. What do we do with the rest of those kids typically? Not much, right? Or even say, go on to class, get going, it's not a show, get back to class. So we shoo them away and then don't follow up with them really. But that's a lot of power right there that we're not utilizing. Okay. All right, so the importance of really using those bystanders, teaching them skills, making sure that they feel comfortable reporting, building relationships with all those kids so that we can make those shifts around the bullying circle. Okay, any questions about the roles, the bullying roles in the situations? Okay. Just one announcement before, I was going to do this at break, but since we're not taking a break, just for you guys, the door's going to get locked at 5:45, so, so if you go out, you won't be able to come back in. I think we'll be done by then, but just in case, don't go outside. Okay, let's talk about what you can do. You can be diligent in your observations. Really look at not only what behavior you're seeing, but what are the relationship between those kids? Is there a power imbalance? Have you seen some of this kind of behavior before from either of these students? Is there a pattern? What are the facial expressions? What are those characteristics of those kids? Are they friends? Really take a look at the things that are going on around that incident. Who's involved? Be diligent in your supervision, in your observations. Observe kids who maybe have had a change of behavior. Start missing school more often. Really think about what's been going on with kids and check in with them if you notice a change in behavior. Maybe a kid starts kind of dropping out of activities that they typically have been involved with. Don't want to go to volleyball practice anymore. Avoid a certain class or a certain hallway. Okay. Have relationships with your kids, and really be observant of those kinds of changes in behavior. And then if you come on a situation, be diligent about intervening and kind of looking at the whole situation. If you do come on to a situation, make sure you intervene immediately. If you see it, stop it, report it. You want to stop it immediately. Boy, all those kids, they just want it to stop. Most of those kids that are bullied, they just want it to stop. So the sooner you can intervene and get at least that incident to stop, you're really helping out that student. But don't shoo everybody away. Use it as a teachable moment. Okay, so you want to name the behavior. That's bullying behavior. You're name calling, you're pushing, you're kicking. That's bullying behavior. We don't allow that in our school. Make sure that the student who's being bullied is okay. Now, you don't want to gush over them, because if they're on the verge of tears anyways, and you talk, oh, are you okay? And have them try to start talking, that's not going to work. They just want to get out of the situation, most likely. So just, assure them you're sorry it happened, send them on their way if they need to be sent, if they need to go and get another lunch, if they need to go get a Band-Aid, if whatever, find a way to get them out of the situation. And then support, acknowledge those bystanders, okay? Either in a positive or a negative way. If they're doing something positive and trying to help, let them know you appreciate that. Thanks for helping. I see that you were helping pick up the books, for her. That was very nice. Or if they're laughing and being supporters, you need to acknowledge that too and say that doesn't help the situation here if you're encouraging the bullying behavior to continue. Okay. So these interventions aren't meant to be long and drawn out. Don't get into a lecture. Don't get into an argument with the kids. They might try to say, oh, I was just kidding. I didn't really mean it. He knows I was just kidding. Okay. Might try to justify their behavior. So it's just a quick stop. What you're doing is not okay. Acknowledge the bystanders, and then be on your way. But you've taken the opportunity to do a little teaching right then, to intervene and stop it, which is what the bullied student wants, and then you've used it as a teaching moment for those bystanders. And for the student who's doing the bullying too, you're saying, it's not okay, this is not okay. Then of course you want to report the bullying. If you don't know in your school how the reporting works, find out. There should be some sort of system for reporting bullying incidents. Whether you go to your the teacher that you work with, or you go to the administrator, find out the procedures. And then you want to make sure you follow up. So, in a couple days, check back with that student who was being bullied to see if things have gotten better. Make it a point to check back with them. You can check back with the student who's doing the bullying too. Let them know that you'll be watching and making sure that they stay away from that person, or that this doesn't continue. And so by checking back with that person too, you're letting them know you have been watching and that expectation's there, that behavior stops. We talked about taking advantage of those teachable moments. One skill that you could teach is called the stop, walk, talk. And all that is you teach everybody to say, if they're being bullied, to stop. If that doesn't work, you teach them to walk away. And if that doesn't work, then you teach them to go tell an adult. That's what the talk is. Stop. Tell them to stop, find a way to stop, walk away, and then go tell. You never want to tell a student to ignore it, because they've probably already tried that and it's not working for them. They have trouble defending themselves or making it stop on their own, so they rely on us. They need us to help intervene. And to have them, to tell them to just ignore it isn't helpful. And we don't want to blame the child. Well, what did you do? What did you do first? Okay, and you're kind of assuming then that they were the one that brought it on. We don't want to blame the child for what they're enduring. Teaching the bullying child some empathy when you get a chance. Not in the moment when it's all emotional, but there's some times where you can maybe have a chance to talk to that person about how would you feel if the roles were reversed? If somebody was doing that to you, how would you feel? What could you do differently? Okay. And then teaching the bystanders to intervene. Give them suggestions. What could you have done in that situation to help, rather than laugh? Or rather than just walk away, what could you have done? And maybe you could have walked away, but then what could you have done after you walked away? How could you have come back? Who could you have gotten? Who could you have reported it to? Okay. Questions on that? I tell you what, this is not working very well. So I can't get to me and I can't get to the overhead. So we'll have to stay on the computer. Sorry. Okay. Any questions or comments? Okay, I just want to show you a couple resources that you can use to get more information. This was just a really quick thing. What I will do on this PowerPoint is, I think what I can do is download it as a PDF so it can't be changed in any way, and then I can get it posted. So I will send it to Annette and have her post it on the website with the other handouts. Okay. So I want to show you a couple websites. Of course, you can go to the media library. You all have teacher numbers. So there are lots of resources in the Keystone Library. All you have to do is search the word bullying, and there'll be just tons of things that come up. Books that you can read with kids, some teacher guides and that kind of thing. All of the Olveus materials that I use in training, the books are there. So if you want more information about the definition or the bullying circle, you just need to search Olveus. So you can certainly go to the media library and get lots and lots of information. But I am going to show you a couple websites. It's kind of slow here.